If it wants behaving like that.
Right. Good evening, everybody. Good evening, everybody. This is tonight's meeting of Overview and Scrutiny Board. Just to go through some of the procedures to make sure that everybody is still aware. The meeting this evening will be live streamed to the public. Are there any exempt items?
None, Chair.
Okay. A recording of the meeting will be made available on the council's website within 24 hours of the meeting. That is, of course, subject to any technical glitches. And would members and officers please remember to switch the microphones on when speaking and speak directly into the microphone and switch off when you've finished. Reporting officers joining using Teams, please use the hands up icon on your screen for questions, comments. Please turn your camera and microphone on when you're speaking and off when you're finished. Last and by no means least, please place mobile phones on silent mode or switch them off. And on this occasion, unlike previous ones where I've been caught out, I have already switched mine off. Just so that you know. Okay. Apologies then, please, Eunice.
Yes, Chair. Apologies received from Councillors Ajisola and Councillor Chaudhry, with Councillor Amy Nicole subbing for Ajisola and Councillor Seimai Hussein subbing for Councillor Chaudhry. She's not here yet.
Okay, thank you. Now, just some brief updates. First of all, welcome to any new members of this committee. And I have two new vice chairs as well. So welcome to you specifically as well. And don't forget that you're here to help me. Please. So I'd also like to record formally so that it is there in the minutes. My thanks to previous members, people who are no longer members of this committee, and thank them for the contributions that they made to the previous meetings and to the business of OSB. Right. You will also have found a new section in your papers for tonight's meeting. They're called information items. Because we have been having very long meetings with OSB and with an attempt to try and see if we can make things a little bit more streamlined, it might be a forlorn hope, but we're trying. We've introduced for this time some things which we've called information items. They're papers at the very end of your papers. They are typically ones which I have taken a view with Eunice are likely to be less controversial. They're there so that you can read them, and if you wish to, you can feed back comments on them, but we're not expecting to have an officer here to present those papers. If it works out, I'll continue to do that, and I'll consult with members of OSB if I have doubts as to what items should or should not be included in that category. Right. There were actions requested by members at the meeting in February. Some of those are still being progressed, and members will be advised as soon as possible once those answers are there. Finally, a little bit of clarity in respect of one part of the work programme. The Council's annual monitoring report to OSB is not the same as the airport's annual monitoring report. It's been renamed as the Sustainability Report. This item will be moved to the 16th of September meeting, and it's being delivered by the planning consultant, David Gertner, jointly with the airport. So that's what's happening with that. Right. Disclosures of interest. Are there any disclosures of interest?
Chair, minutes.
Sorry?
Minutes.
Oh, sorry. Oh.
Yeah.
Do we not do? Okay. Right. So, sorry, I've just been told I should be doing the minutes first. So can we go to the minutes of the last meeting? And can I ask if everyone is happy with those minutes? And if there are any matters arising out of minutes that I can deal with now? Yes, Councillor Stevens. Can you put your microphone on, please?
Can I please refer to page 9, second paragraph, ninth line from the bottom, starting the apprenticeship strategy, and then on to it's on page 9. So towards the bottom of the second paragraph, where it starts with the apprenticeship strategy. And then if we could turn over the page to page 10, and if we can look at towards the end of the first paragraph, where it starts with in terms of work experience for undergraduates. Yeah. Have you found it, Chair? Yeah. Okay. It just struck me as I was looking at the resolution that when we had the scrutiny debate on the paper, that we had asked for a paper, or can I perhaps reword it now? Could I please request through you, Chair, that we get a paper to come forward to a future meeting looking at the whole strategy of apprenticeships, in the sense that what are the objectives? Because when we went through the agenda last time, it just struck me that there were different potholes of apprenticeships, and they were coming under different discussion topics. And what we need to have for the benefit of true scrutiny is to be able to see what is the objective, what are the targets, what is the strategy to get there, because that is totally missing at the moment. And I think even nationally, I think you pointed out to me prior to this, actually, Chair, that there's a major push for to make apprenticeships a key area and not just university education. So I would like to ask through you, Chair, if we could get a paper to come back to a future meeting delivered by whoever's going to be responsible, so that we can truly scrutinise what is happening within the town.
I second that.
You second that?
I think it's an important piece of work.
Put that to officers with a view to try and get it done.
Thank you. Mistake on page 21. At the top of the page where it's talking about enforcement officers outside the academy in Park Street or outside the schools in Crawley Green Road. I'm not quite sure what schools are in Crawley Green Road, or if there was a mistake in the name of the school, the name of the road. Whether perhaps we were talking about Cutenhoe Road, or maybe we were talking about Newtown Street. But I don't think Crawley Green Road is certainly not in South Ward.
The top paragraph, page 21.
Page 21 in the top
Which
paragraph.
references Crawley Green Road and Cutenhoe Road. And where is the academy?
Well, I'm not quite sure what they're referring to, if honestly. It may have been Newtown Street, perhaps, or perhaps it can't have been Cutenhoe Road because that's mentioned. But certainly Crawley Green Road is, I'm not aware of any schools in Crawley Green Road for a start. And certainly the Crawley Green Road is not in South Ward.
Okay.
Oh, that's something I will have to discuss with him after the meeting.
We will
At some other.
Attempt to be helpful, there is actually one school in Crawley.
Oh, there is. My apologies.
The Ashcroft High School, now called Elizabeth something.
Oh, Elizabeth, yes, sorry. Yeah. Elizabeth Academy, yeah. Thank you.
On page 24, can I just check these, Eunice? Are the reports that we were being promised here, some of those that are underway? We were offered a report concerning the powers of council teams, the possibility of school staggered times, and the traffic manager about illegal parking and enforcement. Is that part of the reports?
That's correct.
That's a due.
The officer is dealing with those, Chair.
Thank you.
Chair, sorry, I had one other.
Yes. Yes, Councillor Franks.
Since we're looking at parking strategy, I just wish to remind everybody that some considerable time ago, full council passed a resolution looking for a strategy. How the hell was it worded? It was a properly thought through strategy to deal with parking on pavements.
Yes.
Bearing in mind that there are not very many, but there are some places where it is perfectly safe to park all four wheels on the pavement without causing any problem for pedestrians or people in wheelchairs or what have you. And there are other places where there should be none at all. And full council agreed some years ago that a properly thought through strategy should be introduced to regulate parking on pavements across the town. I saw nothing of that in the initial draft of the strategy that came before us, and I hope that it will be included in the revised strategy, which I see is on our schedule for, I think it's September.
Note of the fact that
I'll
that's
check
there.
back to the officers, Chair.
Thank you. Yes, we'll take.
As far as I know, this has gone through the executive, and there was supposed to be introduced a pilot in certain area of the town. Vauxhall Estate was one of those that did go ahead, and I believe it was Hollybush Road and areas around there. I'm not too sure that the progress on that would be somewhere along the line, which other areas were supposed to have been tried as well. So if we can look at it, that was agreed and it was implemented to say if we do two pilots at a time. I think Sundon Park was another one where they wanted to try the pilot as well. So I think you can get the progress report on those two.
The other point, Chair, if I may, because we didn't get a proper answer or clarification to the questions, and the question came from Councillor Franks last time and also from myself. It was with regard to the new cemetery, and we were trying to get clarification, which we didn't get, over family plots, and although whether within a family plot it could be a layered form of interment, which happens in lots of cemeteries around the country. And certainly where I've been to funerals in Ireland, that happens a lot. And they're talking about the problems of space in the new plot, and it's going to run out within a very short period of time. But we didn't get any clarification, and I'd like to ask again through you, Chair, if we can get a proper clarification as to what is understood about family plots and how they will be constructed and how family remains will be interred. No problem. Thank you, Chair.
Sorry, yes, another attempt to be helpful. I hope it is. This arose because I pointed out that J.W. Green's grave in Crawley Green Road Cemetery has 11 people buried in it. And if we're concerned about running out of space, then presumably the council should be looking to encourage multiple burials in each plot.
I would like to declare that I'm a landlord, although there's housing elements within the report, but I don't have any pecuniary interests. Just wanted to point that out, Chair.
Any issue with that?
Aurora should be online, Chair.
Good evening. Sorry, you went on mute. I didn't hear you.
That's fine. We've finished the detail of the minutes and so on. So we're now ready to proceed with item 7.
Okay, brilliant. Please bear with me a moment. So overall performance for this year has been highly positive, with 46 measures showing as green, 6 are amber, and 12 measures are red. Beginning with the red measures, the percentage of influenceable council spend through procurement with local suppliers year-end figure is 39.4%. The full year figure is 42.6%, which is short of the target, which is 60. The number of homeless households allocated a permanent offer through the housing register year-end figure of 187 is below the annual target of 210. The number of newly approved foster carers year-end figure of 14 is below the target of 25. There have been staffing issues which have now been resolved. A recruitment officer started in July of 2023, and the service recruited a marketing officer who started in February 2024. This will support the team capacity to recruit and assess a higher number of potential applicants. The Scope 1 fleet fuel 22-23 figure has fallen short of target levels. The increase in CO2 data has derived from greater information being available to fleet services under their existing contract. The increase in CO2 emissions coincides with a new monitoring system that came into place last financial year, which shows more depth of fuel data over our fleet. This is confirmed by looking at the total fuel used by services under the same period, showing a nominal 3.6% increase between 22-23 and 23-24. These anomalies are expected as we see more accurate ways of measuring CO2 emissions start to emerge from our supply chain. Town centre footfall is below target. The year-end figure is provisional as the services are developing a new way of measuring the data, which will provide more robust reporting in the future. The figure will be amended in the following report. The number of affordable homes started on site year-end figure is 15, which is lower than the annual target of 50. The percentage of education, health and care plans issued within 20 weeks, excluding exceptions, 35%, is below the target of 90%. The number of children subject of a child protection plan is 246, which is above the quarterly target of 200, and this indicates poor performance. The timeliness of council tax reduction new claims figure exceeds the target of 25, which indicates poor performance. The unemployment claimant count figure of 6.1% has not met the 1% decrease target. The prevention indicator 1 smoking 21-22 figure of 21.1% is below target of 15%. Services are employing a number of strategies to combat the uptake of smoking. These include working on reducing the impact of illicit tobacco with environmental health colleagues. Due to illicit tobacco being cheaper, this is an important element to reduce prevalence. Working with schools on early intervention and prevention messages, and highlighting the risks of other products that are popular locally, such as shisha. Moving on to the positive measures, the number of London Luton Airport passengers year-end figure of 16.30 has met the annual target. Adult social care financial assessments, both the debt recovery and timeline to process charges year-end figures are within target levels. The number of homeless relief has exceeded the annual target of 241 with 431. The quarter 4 performance demonstrates another strong quarter for the team with 118 relief cases. This is a 55% increase on the services target for the year. Homelessness acceptances are 18% or 303, and this is on target. Antisocial behaviour cases relative to the size of the landlord year-end figure of 48.8 is below the target of 57.6, which indicates good performance. Complaints relative to the size of the landlord, both stage 1s and stage 2s, are lower than the quarterly target, which is good performance. Employees and senior employees of an ethnic minority background as a percentage of our workforce aiming to reflect our communities, year-end figures have both reached target levels. And timeliness of benefits, new claims and changes are on target. Council tax billing percentage of work outstanding over 20 days, year-end figure of 50% is on target. Number supported or amount awarded with discretionary housing payments is within target levels. Statutory compliance for both housing and corporate are on target. Quarter 4 data for these two measures will be available later in the year, but the quarter 3 data for both the percentage of children attending good and outstanding primary, secondary and special schools, and the percentage of attendance in state-funded primary and secondary schools are all on target. The amount of council tax collected is 94.8%, which is positive performance. The total business rates due and total business rates collected is also on target. Timeliness of council tax reduction changes year end is 7.95. The amount awarded with the household support grant is within target levels. The total spend on vulnerable households as at end of Q4 has exceeded the target, which has been achieved by minimising administrative costs of the scheme, and many households have been supported through that scheme. ASCOF adults in contact with secondary mental health services who are in employment figure is 8.3%, which is within the provisional target for the current reporting year. This target will be changed for the following report. Employment in Luton, number of jobs labour force survey, includes self-employed, is on target. Number of apprenticeship starts year-end figure is 68 and has met the target of 5% increase from the previous reporting year. The unemployment rate year-end figure is 5.4% and has met the target as it is a decrease from the previous year-end figure, which is 6.7%. The number of children looked after is 370, which exceeds the target, which is 365, but is still within target levels. Restructuring and staffing issues have meant that caseloads have been relatively high throughout the year. Nevertheless, services have managed to decrease the number of cases with each quarter, and the vacant posts have been recently recruited to. The percentages of hospital discharges within timescale, social care assessments completed within 42 days, year-end figure of 82% is on target. Scope 1 corporate buildings, gas and electricity for the previous year have both reached the annual target of a 9% year-on-year decrease. Attainment, Key Stage 2 reading, writing and maths, and Attainment Key Stage 4 Maths and English Level 5+, the year 22-23 are both on target. Employment in Luton, number of jobs, 21-22 figure is within the 1% increase target, and the unemployment rates year-end figure of 5.4% has met the target as it is a decrease from the previous year's figure. ASCOF proportion of users who reported that they have as much social contact as they would like, 22-23 figure of 47.3% is on target, and the percentage of people referred who need no or reduced care support following period reablement, 22-23 figure, 93% is above the target, which is 90%. Thank you. Are there any questions?
Councillor Franks?
My question is, can we please have a major look at a revision of the way in which this information is presented? It is it's critical information, and it's very interesting information for that matter, but it's hopelessly presented. To give you an example, the unemployment claimant count, we're told, has not met the 1% decrease target. We got that information on page 88. You want to know why? You need to look at page 49. And that is a theme that goes through the whole report. You get a bland statement in the presentation, and about 40 or 50 pages previously, you've got the explanation as to why the target has or hasn't been met. I just think following it and making any real sense of it is utterly impossible. I think we really need a serious look at how this information is presented, so that particularly where targets are not met, where the achievement is flagged red, you need the reasons why in parallel with the fact, and not 40 or 50 pages prior.
Anybody wants to make any comments about what's just been said? Yes.
I agree. It's been a long while since I've come back to scrutiny when I was reading the report. And again, there's no clarity at what point you need to have that thorough debate about those targets which are not being met and what actions need to be taken. You have to be referring backwards and forwards, and it will be helpful if the report is more simpler and we know at what point we need to intervene. So although this, for me, this is an update to what's going on, but you have to go through a lot of papers to really identify where the gaps are and what's being done and what we need to then look at recommending. So I agree with Councillor Franks.
I would partly endorse. I want to firstly by just thanking the officers for where we have so many positive achievements. That's the first thing I'd like to say. So congratulations to the officers for their hard work in what they've done. That was the first thing. But let me come on to a slight criticism, if I may, on one area. If we look at page 36, and
can we just hold on that for a second,
Yep.
Councillor, because I need to try and get a view as to what's been said by Councillor Franks and Councillor Khan here. So, okay, yes, Councillor McMid.
Can I just say that I think those targets that have been met or are green, really, that could be probably towards the end of the report. Those that not been met are red, particularly that is a concern why, and that is what really need to be emphasized at the beginning of the report so the members can really concentrate on those things where there is a problem of performance, and that would make it a lot easier for members rather than going through 120 pages and then trying to get that information. So I think what we're asking for is it could be done in a simpler format that so that we can get an easily what the problem is and where the red targets, those that have not been met, and the reason why they have not. And that then members can challenge that. I think that would be a simpler way of doing it.
So I think
it has been done in the past, so I don't see it's not that difficult to be done. If it's green or amber, then really they're getting very close to being met. But if it's red, then that is a serious concern.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I mean, in terms of a PowerPoint, I think, yes, the presentation is far from ideal, but I think in as much as they could, the officers have tried to explain why for example, some of the targets have not been met. So I think I'll just say that in their defense. I mean, the information is there, but I also agree with the way it's being presented. It's far from ideal because it's just like boxes and charts. So I think if we were to have a genuine look at this and scrutinize what's going on, I think the way it's been presented certainly has some room for improvement.
Can I ask Sally, who's online, she wanted to come in at this point?
Yeah, I just want to come in. The BI team that produced these reports sits within my team. So as the service director, I just wanted to come in on those comments so we can look at the presentation of the report. I think at the moment the thought process was that it's by category with a dashboard as in kind of inclusive economy or against Luton 2040 themes, population wellbeing, etc., with a dashboard at the front and then going into detail so you could delve into each indicator underneath that. So that's the structure. But absolutely take on board comments so we can look at the structure going forward into this next year and thinking about whether we want to highlight those that are red first and use that as an approach. So we can look at that and take on board comments and have an ongoing dialogue about that. That's fine. I think going into this next year, there's also a look at whether these indicators themselves are right and getting them more aligned to 2040 measures that we're developing. So whilst we do that process, we can be looking at actually what's the best way of presenting it as well. So I think we can have an ongoing conversation about that going into the 24-25 measures.
Yes, Councillor Franks.
Yeah, just a quick follow up really on what we've just heard and on Councillor Hussein's point. They're both right. Just we should be looking at the red areas and we should be offering helpful hints perhaps as to what might be done about them. But let's not forget the green areas where in many cases officers are quite rightly very proud of having hit their targets. And this is a public document and I really can't criticise them for wanting to point out how well they've done in the areas where they have actually achieved something. So yeah, we need to concentrate on the bad news, but bearing in mind it's a public document, really can't criticise people for shouting a bit about the achievements.
I would agree, I think, with what Councillor Franks has just said. There's a couple of issues that spring to mind, though. There is no background as to why a particular target level has been set. We don't know why. So if suddenly on one of the things it said it's 47%, it's met target. Well, who's decided it should be 47%? Do you get my point? We're not given any background. And I think we need that background because it isn't, it could be that we say, well, that's great, we met 47%, but should we be at a higher level? I mean, that's one of the other aspects I think that we need to consider. The second thing is, Councillor Franks is quite right, and I did say before that, the officers need to be complimented on why they've done well, but not entirely. I come back to the fact yet again. Now, let me give an example, please. When we're looking at the homelessness figures, which are on page 36, and also the number of affordable homes, it's giving very much a skewed figure. And I'm not quite sure that it's very helpful that we're given the figures in this way and that we're showing smiling faces. Because if we go dig deeper into the background about homelessness within Luton, we find that there are 450 new additions to the homelessness figures every month, and that comes up when we're looking in the peer review group. Now, that doesn't come over in any of these figures. What, in fact, we're facing in Luton, Chair, is a crisis of homelessness, a crisis where we are not able to build enough homes to cover the people that require it. And that doesn't come over in any of these figures. So yes, we can pat ourselves on the back. We can show far smiling faces. But at the end of the day, we're not looking at really what the problem is in these figures that are coming forward, if you understand the point. And you yourself, Chair, advised me earlier today about where Luton stands in renting. I think you picked up something in an article in the newspaper, I believe, which showed that Luton was actually the bottom of the country. Was it on rental? I think you pointed out to me.
That's quite right. I did. The newspaper this week actually said that in January of this year, Luton was the worst affected in terms of the number of applicants trying to seek a single property for rental. The highest number of people trying to chase the same property. Councillor Begum first, if I may.
Thank you, Chair. My question is slightly different, actually. So I'm just referring back to page 89 of the report, and it is with relation to smoking and shisha. We've discussed this on a previous meeting before, and there's no mention of e-cigarettes, which is something that is very popular amongst the young people, certainly with school and sort of college-age children. What are we doing to tackle that, and why is that not recorded? Because that is quite a growing market, and as well, if we can tackle that, that will fit in with our 2040 vision when it comes to population well-being, because there are a lot of shops that have being set up that sell to underage children. So there's a couple of issues that we need to deal with, and how is that going to be recorded and presented?
Sally, did you want to come back in on the question of e-cigarettes and why that's not tracked?
Yeah, I can do. So the data that's in there is on smoking prevalence, which is national data that we've got that we can present and we can compare to national comparators and similar areas, etc. We do have some data on vaping locally, but mainly through the school survey. And it's not always a big enough sample to be really robust, and then we can't compare it to national, and it's difficult to set targets and all of that. But we do have some local data on it, and we do recognise it's a really important issue. And the tobacco strategy is doing, through the tobacco strategy, we're doing quite a lot of work in that area. So we're doing some campaign work with schools, making sure that young people know the harms, and working with trading standards. We're doing a lot of work around both illicit tobacco and illicit vapes, and we're working in partnership through the tobacco strategy on that. So yes, completely recognise that is an issue, and we are working in that area. And in fact, there's a paper coming to Children's Scrutiny on that in a few weeks. So there's a paper that's going through on that very topic.
Okay, thank you. I'm on that board, so I'll look out for that. Thank you.
Okay. And can I just, whilst you've got me, can I just come in on just the earlier points around the targets, and just completely agree that the targets need to be right. And I don't know the detail of all of them and how they were set, but absolutely completely agree that when we're setting targets, they need to make sense. If you're just continually hitting a target and it looks great, but actually it's not showing the right things, then obviously that misses the point. So yeah, take that comment on board, and we can work with that going forward in this new refresh as we go forward as well.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I think what I appreciate, yourself, Chair, and others have talked about articles in the newspapers. I think we should really go by what's in front of us, because, we've got to realise that what's in the press is quite subjective. So we just got to be mindful of that, because at the end of the day, we also have an obligation as members to look about the reputation of the town. So, I wouldn't give too much credence to what's said in the press, because, well, right now what we are discussing should be about based on what's in front of us, and not what's not in front of us. And we don't know how that data was gathered and what measures they were using and what sample they were using. So we just got to, I think, we should just really go by what's in front of us. Thank you, Chair.
I don't want to lose the points that I made. Quite rightly say, we do have in front of us, Councillor, we do have the information. Some of it is in this report, some of it is when we're looking at the peer review, and it does show the depth of the problem that we're facing. And it can't get away from it. I've had meetings with Colin Moon. It is 450 new homeless figures added to the target each, and it's a huge target. We are not building homes. We're not building affordable homes. Do we have the land to do it? So we are facing a crisis, and it's not particularly helpful, with all the respect to the officers, to put little smiling faces over things when we haven't really got to the depth of the problem. And we do need somehow, that needs to be taken back, and I think we need to get a further report looking at how we deal with homelessness, how we're going to get out of this problem. Because I think it was by the peer group that came in have identified this as a significant issue that we are going to have to face going forward towards 2040, and it's not easily solvable.
First of all, no, I agree with you. We don't want to lose the point. The point that you've just made, which is concerning homelessness and how we're going to treat it, can we look, Eunice, towards getting specific reports relating to homelessness? It is a major issue, not just for Newton, of course, but throughout the country. But if we can look to see how we can get something come. Councillor, you wanted to come back in?
Just on housing, and I completely agree. The figures are staggering. Luton is one of the worst in the country when it comes to homelessness. There's no hiding or denial about that. 450 to 500 people every month are becoming homeless, and you have 1,400 families living in shared rooms in hotels. It's that bad. And it is, when I was part of the peer review, it was the single biggest issue that this council faces. And it's important that we look at in depth, because there are people virtually living in dire conditions, and it's something needs to be done. And we, as an overview and scrutiny committee, do need to contribute. And I've got just a couple of other points that I need to sort of highlight, and we need to get some more data. It is encouraging that we're having now the staff, which is reflecting more to the population, but we are looking at low-level employment, and we haven't set a figure for senior level management and for those people who live in the town and get a job in the town. That I like to see, and we need to put a target to that. When we're looking at target, we're looking at overall target from cleaners all the way to management. But what we do need to separate is also senior management as well, because if we're going to eradicate poverty, we are talking about getting people into decent jobs. And if they have decent jobs, they can afford decent homes. And that links into all of this. And another thing that I would like to see also is the EHCP care plans. We have a shared service with Bedford. Bedford seems to be getting better and meeting targets, but yet we're not. So, it's one service while we're not getting value for money. And that's something I like to see. What targets are we putting across, where we're going wrong, and a report back would be quite useful. There are a lot of other things, but I don't want to take too much of your time, but I think we need to start unpicking some of this to really add value.
I'm going to, bearing in mind the discussion, I will go out to all members of OSB asking for volunteers, and hopefully that will be acceptable to the officers as well, but asking for volunteers for us to look at how this data might be presented differently. And I'd like to do that jointly with officers, Eunice, if I may. Now, before we move on, I don't want to move on from this report without now asking if there are any detailed questions which sit within the report, because we talked about the report generically. What we haven't done is to find out if members have any specific questions and concerns about what they've seen in the report.
Sure, it's not a major concern, but it is a major concern, but it comes back to the thing about target setting. I noticed that in the peer review document, that it talked about 95% of our children attend good or outstanding schools.
I'm sorry, but we're not in the peer.
No, but I'm coming. You'll see the point. Whereas when we look at the figures that are shown on page 61, it doesn't show that 95% of all of our children are attending good or outstanding schools. And I come back to the question again, is why are we setting a target? If for example, we have 100% of our children attending good and outstanding schools, special schools that is, why are we not trying to look to get 100%? Why is the target not 100%? We may not achieve it, but why are we not setting the bar to that same 100%? Why should not all of our children in Luton be attending good or outstanding schools? So again, I have an issue with the targeting. It was picked up, and maybe it needs to be looked at. But I have an issue with targeting, because if I was if I was a head teacher, I would want to have 100% of my students in the school which is outstanding, good or outstanding. And I think that isn't, again, coming across in this document. And I pick up the point why you say it's not in the, we're not on the peer review. When we get to the peer review, it mentions that 95% of our children are at good or outstanding schools. So obviously somebody's looked at making a mean average across those schools there, and it's skewing, once again, the figures that we're beginning to look at.
I understand what you're saying. However, what we've concluded, I think, from the meeting this evening already, is that we need to work with officers to try and find a way of putting some of this more easily understood, and target is part of it. What I was wanting us to try and do was to try and see if there were any detailed points that people have raised from this report, because the report does actually contain a lot of information, but you have to spend a very significant amount of time, including drilling down into the sub-reports and into the sub-data, in order to find the answers that you're looking for.
Can I ask here that I think in we need to be, in terms of the resources, in terms of all the information that's given, is prioritize which are the major issues that we have a concern. Yes, we have a housing crisis. Yes, we have a cost of living crisis. All those things, children poverty. But we need to, at the end of the day, look at one or two issues, if we can, as a one particular subject, so that we can then put more time into it to see what the solutions are and how things could be tackled. Yes, we do know there's 450 people, that is a fact. You only have to walk into the town hall every day and see for yourself, the number of families that are here. It is not the repetition that we do have a crisis in that, and we need to accept that. It's not deniable. But what is the housing people doing? What are we trying to build more houses? Because we haven't got everybody in this room knows we haven't got the land to be able to build these houses. We haven't got our neighbors to cooperating with us. So these things does not depend wholly in Luton solution. It is our neighbors to cooperate. So hopefully, if there is a change of government, we might see a new planning policy.
To just help to make things simpler, I mean, everything has to be around what is our intentions, our corporate plan, what is the strategy, and what are our priority areas. There's far too much detail on sort of those actions, but if we think there is an area of priority which is not going to plan, and what are those projects that we're putting in place, and why are they not being met, and then once we have that, we can, one subject at a time, we can drill down. For example, education is one of the key priority areas. Now, in order to get people out of poverty, you need to make sure they've got good education and skills. What this report tells you is that 90% are attending good schools, but it's not separate from academies and council-run schools. I would want to know how many of those schools that we manage and lead, both in the primary and secondary, are doing good and better. And being a portfolio holder, I know that our record is more, not as good as academies. I would want to know where we're going wrong, for example. And when you look at the number of students that are coming out with 5 GCSEs or plus, we're one of the lowest in the country. Now, something doesn't stack up here. Now, if they're going to good and outstanding schools, why are they not coming out with the right qualifications, and why they're not getting the job? So we need to understand that trail. We need to understand that journey, and then see what can be done about it. And I think that's the kind of stuff that I think that we need.
The way in which we're looking at some of this. If I take my own analysis, and I don't want to try and take over the meeting, that's not why I'm here as chair. But for example, we were talking about housing. Now, I would make the assumption, because of what I know from other work that I do within the council, I would make the assumption that part of the reason that we haven't reached our target on housing is because of the 2 failed developments of Vauxhall Homes, for example, which were intended to provide some a level of affordable housing. I understand. but nonetheless was supposed to have provided some affordable housing. So I would wish to have seen from this report whether that was the case or whether it was for some other reason we hadn't missed it. I saw in another area town centre footfall being low and so on. I would like to know whether that is because of safety, or is it because of the lack of mix of retail? Is it the lack of night economy, or what is it? Could we do something about it? Like maybe have a weekly market or something. And if I look onto it, again, on the education front, the detail of the report is suggesting that we have a lot of special educational needs children from other councils. Are we being paid for them? How is it operating? Why is it that we're dealing with special educational needs children from other councils? Is this an agreement we've got? That sort of thing did not come through to me from the reading of the report. So if I go back to where the general discussion has been, yes, there is a need for us to understand more about what sits behind some of these numbers, which is, I think, the point that you were trying to make, Councillor Hussain, which is that we therefore need to perhaps focus more and let some of the other pieces go, so we concentrate in more detail on some of the stuff that we as councillors are more concerned with. Is that a general consensus, or am I reaching the wrong conclusion?
Yes, Chair, I think you've got the right focus without any doubt at all. But I'm really, really keen that we do not take away from officers the opportunity to shout about their achievements. So that has, particularly in a prominent and public document like this. Could I just say something about targets? In general, a target is not an incentive to improve if it is plainly unachievable. So there needs to be a great deal of care in setting targets. And I know that many of the officers are well aware of this, which is why they don't set 100% targets when they know that those who are expected to achieve it will already know that it can't be done. So in order to be an incentive to improve, a target must be, with the right effort, must be achievable.
Yeah, I do think it's in the right part where we need to concentrate more on where we are going, the breakdowns and things. Because when I was looking at the report, I was looking at attendance and I was looking at the secondary schools being much worse off in terms of obviously failing schools, because they're 84%, whereas the primary schools are at 95%. Yeah. That isn't good enough. Yeah. I mean, like my fellow councillor said about finding out whether they're Luton Borough Councils or are the academies. If they're Luton Borough Council ones, what can we do to step in to help them and support them? I think we need to look at more the holistic approach of where we can help these schools improve. I'd also like to know if the lower attendance is mostly driven in the failing schools, those that need it, because hopefully the good schools or the outstanding schools have got better attendance, maybe because they're doing something better perhaps. And when I looked at the persistent absences, we didn't even get a percentage at all, we just got a figure. And actually we're doing better than the national average, because I worked out at 16.5%. And the national average is 22.3% with who are persistently with 90% or less. So I just think we need to focus on things that are going to be more tangible, more meaningful, to help us think about, well, where can we go from here? Thank you.
Don't know quite how to pull this one together, so let's give it a try. First of all, I would like to agree completely with what Councillor Frank said, that there is a great deal that's been done by the officers, which is extremely good result given the resources that have been made available. And I think we should compliment the officers for the work that's been done. I will be pulling together and asking for volunteers from this group, from this board, towards trying to see how we can maybe get a structuring of a report that comes to this overview and scrutiny board that is more easily understood, and perhaps, as Councillor Hussain has suggested, perhaps more focused into certain areas. So we'll do that going forward. I just ask now, as the final goes down on this section of our meeting tonight, are there any other views which members of the board wish to make at this point? Yes, Councillor Franks.
I'm sorry to prolong this, but just one point picking up on Jill Fry's point about the difference between high schools and primary schools. We do need to bear in mind that none of the high schools in Luton are local authority schools. None at all. So the council's ability to influence what goes on in high schools is obviously exists, but it's much more limited than it is in the primary schools, most of which are in fact local authority schools.